personal statements don't have to be daunting. I know you may feel like the girl on the left here, totally overwhelmed, not wanting to write personal statements, but they really can be fun. This is your chance on your university application to show who you are, to give people a sense of what you value and what you're interested in. And there's really not a lot of other opportunities for doing that in a university application. So the personal statement is really special. You want to make the most of it. And there are some key ways to do that. So great personal statements pad your application. So I have the princess and the P over here to help you remember that. They provide a window into your personality. Like I said, your values, your beliefs, what you're interested in. They are well researched with subject specific knowledge. This is especially true if you're targeting universities in the UK. And they demonstrate writing and communication skill. So they provide a window, they are well researched, and they demonstrate your writing skills. And you want to focus on each of these areas when you write it. Now, how do they provide a window is something that we'll talk about a little bit later, but first I want to talk about common mistakes. Do not. And then we'll talk about how to actually use the pad technique. So a common mistake that I see in personal statements is cliched writing. The tendency is for almost every student to start their personal statement with something like, I've always loved insert subject here. So my love of physics began when I used to look up at the night sky as a child and found it breathtaking and awe-inspiring. That's not a particularly bad sentence. It's grammatically correct. But the issue with this is that it's cliched. Or I've always been passionate about Shakespeare. Ever since I came out of the womb, I've been reading Habermas, whatever the case may be. Really cliched. And I understand the tendency to start from this point, but I want to push you to think of a hook, a way in that is a little bit more engaging than I've always been interested in this subject. Another mistake I see is listing activities. Sometimes students will treat their personal statement like a grocery list, but it's not a grocery list. The committee doesn't just want to know what you've done. They want to know what you've learned from that, how that's shaped you into a person, how that's informed your values or what you think about a subject. So don't tell us what you've done in your personal statement. Really show us. And part of showing is developing a clear narrative, a story. Ultimately, human minds are drawn to storytelling. We like to know about tales with protagonists and antagonists, and we like to have a bit of action. Your personal statement is not going to be a story from start to finish, but it should have some narrative elements, and you are the protagonist of that story. So include an example if it supports your overall story, but you don't need to say, first I joined robotics team, and then I got really interested in mathematics, and then I did this, that, and the other. Pull in the examples that are relevant, but don't feel tempted to over describe or over list. Another mistake I see is what I call quote soup. And Edna from The Incredibles here is telling us no quotes. This isn't a hard and fast rule. Of course, you might be able to effectively integrate a quote. But in addition to starting personal statements with, I've always been interested in this subject, another thing I usually see is students opening with, some quote from Martin Luther King Jr. or Churchill or Gandhi. I guarantee you the admissions committee has read that quote so many times. So you always want to be absolutely sure if you're using a quote that it is unique and that it is adding to your statement. Don't just put one for the sake of having it in there. Remember, this is a personal statement where the admissions committee is going to want to see your thoughts. So, and you only have a limited number of words, 500 words. So you want to use those words on what you think. I'm not saying never use a quote, but I am saying really think about it because it's a bit overdone in this area. All right, now I want to talk about how do you have that driving narrative in your personal statement. And for this, I'm actually going to look to an unlikely place, which is the business leadership literature. There is this thinker who you may have heard of, Simon Sinek, who has this famous concept called the golden circle. And he's an advertising guru, so he did a lot of marketing and talks about why companies are successful. But I think a lot of his lessons are applicable to the writing of personal statements as well. Ultimately, writing a personal statement is marketing, in a sense. You're trying to pitch yourself to a university. And so I am going to borrow one of his concepts, this golden circle, to try to highlight a way that you can think about writing your personal statement. So Simon Sinek has this book, Start With Why, where he introduces the golden circle. He says that a lot of companies will tell you what they do and then how, and then they might say why at the end. So in the electronics business, we manufacture computers. Maybe we're HP. We manufacture computers. We use the latest technology. We have this really cool chip that does all kinds of things and is faster than any other chip. And we do this so that you'll have a good computer. Okay, sort of convincing, but maybe not dazzling. Instead, Sinek says that you should invert it. You should start with why. You hit the target, then you work your way out. So you start with your purpose, why you do what you do. Then you say how you do it, and then you say what you've done. A personal statement is the same way. These activities that I'm talking about that support what you've done, they should only be used to the extent that they frame why you're interested in a subject. So you want to hit that target. You want to hit the purpose. Take some time to really think about this. Why do you want to study your subject? What are you hoping to do in the next 5 years, 10 years? I know that can be kind of daunting to think about, and you don't have to be completely committed to what you say in your personal statement, but you do need to have some sort of coherent narrative driving what you're writing. Now I'm going to show a clip from Sinek's TED Talk. So here's Sinek at a TED Talk in 2009 in Puget Sound, Washington, where he's explaining this golden circle. And he's going to talk about Apple in this example. And I want to listen to this example to give you a sense of what I'm talking about.
For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight, and the Wright brothers beat them to it? There's something else at play here. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done. That's how most sales is done. And that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do. We say how we're different or how we better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You ready?
All right, so that is the bit I wanted to show you, and I hope that you can see how that is more impactful. Starting with why is very persuasive, and that is the kind of thing I want you to do in your statement. So I'm going to give you an example, and I'm not saying this is the best example in the world, but it is an example from my personal statement I used to get into Oxford. So some context for you all. I am from Kentucky. As I said, my parents are both from Letcher County, which is a tiny little place in the mountains of Appalachia. So there's this Appalachian mountain chain that runs through the United States. Very, very rural, very, very poor. My grandmother, for instance, has lived on the same mountain her entire life, and my grandfather was a coal miner to pay for their living expenses. So they lived through poverty, through poor healthcare, through times of economic depression. And now in Eastern Kentucky, which is the part of the state that has the mountains, a lot of young people leave. There's out-migration because there's not a lot of job opportunities. This sparked my interest in social policy. Seeing what has happened to my parents' hometown and the way that demographic aging has affected it got me interested. And I knew that that was part of my why, but I wanted to communicate that purpose. So in my personal statement, I started with my why. When I committed to studying social policy, I did so because I had a mission to use evidence-based policy to generate better opportunities for marginalized communities. That's a why. In learning social policy alongside the world's preeminent scholars, I can better understand the factors creating cycles of poverty in rural places and how welfare state policies can address them. That's sort of the how, by learning, by going to this program. Reading for the MPhil in comparative social policy is the logical next step in this journey. That's the what. What I see students do often is the inverse. I want to study for, or I want to read for the master's or the bachelor's in social policy. I'm really interested in learning from the best professors. And they either leave out the why or they'll briefly touch on it, but it's not driving their statement. I want you to try to frame your statement in terms of why, how, what, because writing from why builds impact.